T-Dog, J-Boy, and me, I'm Lugs. Our pride and joy is pumping our mugs. Be careful, kids, it could get rough. We're flipping our lids on sports and other stuff.
Welcome to Sport Weasel Central. I'm Lugs.
I'm J-Boy.
I'm T-Dog.
Yes, sir, fellas. Nice to see you, boys. We're knocking on the door of a couple of things this week. Baseball's trading deadline, and we want to know the future of Shohei Ohtani. And the NFL kickoff is coming September 7th. That's really close. And on this episode, we'll profile the AFC West. But first, some would argue there's only one other player in the long history of Major League Baseball who compares to the Angels' Shohei Ohtani, and that would be one, George Herman Babe Ruth. Both a stellar pitcher, and he's currently leading the majors with 32 home runs. At age 29, Ohtani's just coming into his prime. But his contract is up at the end of this season. So, Lugs, what do the Angels do? Sign him to the largest contract in baseball history? Lose him in free agency, likely to the crosstown hated Dodgers? Or trade him and get a truckload of prospects? What do you say?
Oh, I'd trade him.
What?
He is a talent of a century, probably. Yeah, I think you've got to trade him because what the Angels, they've got so much money invested in Mike Trout, Ohtani, and then if they tried to keep him, they would have, they're estimating between $500 and $600 million.
Yep.
Just as a starting point. So I think you've got to trade him. I think the most logical place would be the Dodgers in that they have an amazing farm system. It would keep him on the West Coast. Obviously, he's Japanese. He probably wants to be able to fly fairly conveniently to get back home. So I say you've got to trade him. I mean, and then you get into what comes back and that sort of thing with the Dodgers, or, you know, poetically, the Yankees could be an option just because they had the Babe there. But I think it'll end up being the Dodgers. I just do.
T-Dog, what do you think about Mr. Shohei Ohtani?
I don't have a lot to add to this because I don't follow Major League Baseball enough. I know he's leading the majors in home runs. I know I believe he's 7-5 pitching. So, like you said, like you all said, he is obviously an incredibly unique talent. And even though maybe you wouldn't like to see him, play in the Dodgers, if you're an Angels fan, if it's the best deal, I don't think he's re-signing because, again, going back to his time in Japan when he played in their major leagues, he's so used to winning. I just think a competitor probably his level, just being mediocre to awful teams, it probably gnaws at him. He's not going to re-sign, I would assume. I don't know that. And I agree with Lugs. He probably wants to stay on the West Coast. So I guess some of the teams that can really propose something are the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks. But again, I don't know why I'd want to go to the Diamondbacks or maybe Texas Rangers, but that's in division, I believe. So I just think the Dodgers makes the most sense.
I have some thoughts on it too. I think if you think about his career, what do you want to do? Well, you want to make a lot of money. Check, he'll make that. But you also want to play in October, and you want to win a World Series. So where are the most likely chances of doing that? Well, it's going to be a big market club. Dodgers, Yankees, probably. Because they're going to be around, and they've got the collateral and the money to pay. Now, if the Angels just let him walk and say, go sign, dude, that's a big loss for them. If they trade him, oh my gosh, that is a big deal because, Lugs, as you said, you don't know what exactly. You think they're all good prospects, but you're one Tommy John surgery or a blown out knee from having a bad prospect pretty soon. So I'll throw out a couple of wild cards. Baltimore Orioles, because they've got the best farm system arguably in baseball. And this is an iffy here. Tampa Bay Rays. If he goes there and they're as good as they are this year, they win. I mean, if they trade him now to Tampa Bay or Baltimore, you can put a check mark in a World Series W for one of those teams. So is it short-term, long-term? What's he going to do? I guess we'll find out. But it's intriguing. But I think we're seeing one of a lifetime for us, in a guy who, is just spectacular. I mean, nothing else to say.
I got to say, I haven't really watched baseball that much, but I have tried to catch a couple of his games. And that game against the Yankees, he hit an in-the-park triple that, I mean, the ball changed shapes. You could see it change. I mean, he flattened that sucker out. And it would be good for a guy of his skill level to get on a championship team. And it's going to be the Dodgers. Probably the Braves are real good too.
Yeah, they are.
So there will be some problematic issues there. But yeah, he has to stay on the West Coast. It just makes sense.
It's kind of a magical year. You got Ohtani doing his thing. You got a guy on Atlanta knocking on 400 for the first time since George Brett in 1986, I think. And then you got the crazy man up in Cincinnati, Ellie De La Cruz, who's just doing ridiculous things at age 21, including a couple of, Fridays ago, stealing second, third, and home on 2 pitches as the pitcher just turned his back. I mean, the kid's ridiculous. Joey Votto said, put him on his own planet. He needs his own league. So, lots to talk about there in baseball. It's an exciting time for folks who follow the big game, and I think some of the changes they made are working, and we'll see how it shakes out. So that'll be just a few weeks away when they decide what happens to old Shohei.
I have a thing to throw out about the MLB.
Yep.
How about let's get it down? You could almost cut that season in half. They do like 160-some games.
162, not 160-something. It's 162.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mathematics. Well, all I'm saying is, October, that's football, baby. World Series don't mean jack to me. Once you get cool weather, I got a jacket on. I've been to a high school football game, and the NFL is in it. Why do you need 162 games? I guess people in the seats, money, but still, I don't know. Anyway, that's my suggestion.
It's a long, long argument. I mean, tradition is the first answer. They did play 142 back in the Babes' day in the 20s and in the late 1800s. But it's been that way forever, and I agree with you that, and we all know that when they had a playoff game, and sometimes a World Series game, a regular season NFL game on Fox or CBS will beat a World Series game or a playoff
big
game
bad boy.
in ratings pretty handily. And so you're onto something, and that's why they've made the changes they've made, they think, to bring back people to the game. But the average baseball viewer is a guy in his 50s or 60s. And I don't think I think the NFL crosses a lot more demographics than that. So.
Oh, for sure.
All right, let's move it on along here. The AFC West, let's talk about that. Yes, it's a highly anticipated year with lots of changes in the division, new coaches, new stuff, new coordinators. Last year it stacked up like this. The Chiefs, imagine that, were 14-3 and Super Bowl champs. The Chargers were 10-7. The Raiders were 6-11. And the Broncos were just 5-12 with old Coach Hackett, who's no longer there, and we know Sean Payton's the man. So let's get this started. Lugs, who do you like in 4th place in the 2023 AFC West?
Well, I hate to go against my boy Jimmy Garoppolo, but I don't think the Raiders have a real shot at anything. They're just screwing up too much. First of all, you got to re-sign Josh Jacobs. He was the only thing that they had going for them. But obviously that deadline passed, and unless he decides to sit out, he's going to be just making the $10 million, which is a lot of money, but you'd think a man who gave as much as he did to that offense, it would be worth more. Their schedule is not good. It really isn't. I mean, they play first of all, everybody in division is going to beat them handily. There's just no doubt about that. The only way that they can get anywhere close is, they play the NFC North, so they'll get the Packers and Vikings, Bears, and Lions. I don't think they can beat, the only team I think they can beat is the Bears there. So at this point, I'm saying they're going to be lucky to get back to what they did last year at 6-11. I'm calling 6-11.
T-Dog, how do you feel about the fourth place in the AFC West?
Oh, it's the Raiders. They were 6-11 last year. In my opinion, they downgraded in quarterback from Carr to Garoppolo. It's not that Garoppolo's not good, but again, we saw with Shanahan. Shanahan can really improve and upgrade his quarterback through the running game, and in what we kind of talked about last year, skill position wise, the 49ers might have one of the most talented skill position groupings in the history of the NFL. And Garoppolo was okay. And then you have Brock Purdy come off the street, who started for multiple years in college, but evidently right away, I think he played better in that system than Garoppolo did entering his fourth or fifth year in that offense. That's a huge red flag, I think. And number two, his foot might not be healed right. So he still has, there's a potential for him to be cut before the season if his foot doesn't medically get evaluated correctly. And I think it will. But Lugs hit on it too. Their best player last year, I mean, you can make a case for Devontae Adams, but I would say it's Josh Jacobs. Not getting a long-term contract, I mean, he might sit out games. Yep. And even when he does play, he's going to be disgruntled. And, you look on defense, Max Crosby, their defensive end, I mean, he's a beast. But you look at that back seven, it's really spotty. Particularly the secondary. I mean, and you want to talk about a weakness not to have in that division with the Chargers and the Chiefs and with Sean Payton calling the offense of the Broncos this season. That's not a weakness to have. Nate Hobbs had some moments at corner, but he's still green. Brandon Fakion, he started 17 games in the last 5 seasons. He's possibly going to be the corner opposite of Hobbs. Marcus Epps played well for the Eagles last year, but they were loaded on defense. I mean, so it might have been a good free agency signing, but I think he might have been masked by just the pure amount of talent. And then Trevion Morig, just the light bulb hasn't gone off for him, third-year player at safety. Their one saving grace is the receivers. They have 3 receivers that have at least had 80 catches in a season. Devontae Adams proved he just wasn't a product of Aaron Rodgers, and he is a true number 1 receiver. There's not that many guys that are true number 1 receivers, and he is of that ilk. Jacoby Myers, who was brought in from New England, free agent, he's a solid technician who consistently do the right thing, but he's never going to be a playmaker. Similarly, Hunter Renfrow is a great slot receiver who wins with quickness and route running. But again, like Devontae Adams, if he gets injured, they're in real trouble. And the last thing I'll say is just McDaniels. It feels like he imploded another AFC West team. So 4-13.
4-13. Wow. Almost got him wearing the collar. I thought you were going to go there for a minute.
No, I don't think there's any collars this year.
No collars. Okay, that's a sneak preview for that other division. All right, so I'm going to agree with you guys. Let's just call it what it is. The Raiders, this is the story of 2 guys named Josh and a guy named Jimmy. Josh McDaniels, we all don't like him. We think he's going to be on his last leg here, I think, anyway. This might be his last year as head coach of the Raiders. We don't think he's been just bouncing around and refusing jobs here and there and then finally sticking and not doing any good. Josh Jacobs, we all agree, the whole talk about what are running backs being paid, why aren't they being paid? And, yeah, he may not even play in some games. The missing Derek Carr piece, which I think he'll have a good year where he landed. And I think Jimmy G, I think you're right, this is it. The The Emperor's new clothes finally come away, and Jimmy G is who we thought he was, and that is kind of average at best. And we'll just see. But I'm gotten them. You got 4-13. I'm going to split the difference with you boys. I'm going to go 5-12. So Raiders, last place in that their AFC West. Lugs, who do you like in the third slot? The win place, that'd be the Show, I guess.
I'm going to say the Broncos. I think they will be improved with Sean Payton, but I don't think they'll be improved greatly. They'll be improved greatly over last year. But anyway, their schedule is pretty tough, but they do have Commanders, Texans, and Bears on the schedule, so that they can put in the second string or third string and whack those people. Just looking over everything that they have, obviously Russell Wilson, it's a make or break time for him. They improved the offensive line somewhat. The running back, and plus Sean Payton is just, he's an offensive genius. I mean, so you might get a little bit of that flavor from New Orleans during the peak of that sort of run that Peyton had there. But after it's all said and done, I will give them a winning record. I'll say 9-8. 9-8. They will have a winning record. They're not going to make the playoffs.
Wow, T-Dog, where are you going on that?
I'll say first, I think Lugs' record is probably more accurate than what mine's going to be. But I think we share a similar chord that I think pretty much everyone feels. Sean Payton will turn this team around quickly, but I don't know if it'll be this year, just because you look at the disparity at the quarterback position in division, and then if you really look at the rest of the roster, the Broncos, I mean, there's some good pieces, but it's still kind of a mess. They emphasize building up that offensive line by signing free agents Mike McGlinchey at tackle and Ben Powers. And their offense is going to be built around a run game and play action. Just the unfortunate thing is their stud running back, Javonte Williams, his knee was tore up so significantly last year. I don't know if he's going to be ready at the beginning of the season. I think there's a good chance he starts the season on the pup. They signed Samaje Perine, who last year showed he can be a very good quality starter, I think. But if he has to really carry the load for even like half a season, I'm kind of worried, because they didn't really add, I think, a lot of talent behind that. And speaking of talent, all their wide receivers have the same thing, where Jerry Jeudy obviously last year looked like he kind of started to break out. Sutton and Patrick, Sutton, he had an ACL injury 2 years ago. He still hasn't recovered. Tim Patrick, he tore his ACL last year. He didn't play. And KJ Hamler, who's so explosive at wide receiver out of Penn State, he has yet to be healthy. They all have talent, but they just haven't been consistent with it. And I believe Russell Wilson will bounce back this year because of pride, and that he actually has a good play caller, and not Nathaniel Hackett. So, I look at the main thing is their defense. I think the weakness is that D-line. They signed another free agent. They were very busy in free agency in signing Zach Allen from the Arizona Cardinals. He's a solid all-around edge, but DJ Jones, their other defensive end, and their nose tackle, Michael Purcell, they're just fine. They're mainly there just to kind of eat up offensive line so linebackers can run free. I think that's their weakness, but the overall strength of this team is their secondary. Patrick Surtain, the second, is one of the best corners in the league. And then opposite him, Demario Mathis, who was a rookie last year, showed he had the ability to be a quality starter. If you look at Justin Simmons from year to year, he consistently gets 5 to 6 interceptions a year. He's a ball hawk. And then the young safety, Caden Stearns, showed flashes last year. Again, I think Lugs' record is probably more accurate. I think they will be above 500. But again, because of the disparity at quarterback with the Chiefs and Chargers. I have them 7-10.
7-10 for the Broncos. Okay, I'm going to agree with you, fellas. I think we're going to do that across the board here. This is like the Saints to me. It's an undersized quarterback and a Sean Payton offense, much like he had in New Orleans. And I'm thinking also, though, they're an over-under team of 8.5 wins. I think they'll make that. I think some say Sean Payton's one of the best offensive minds in the past 25 years in the National Football League. Where's Nathaniel Hackett anyway, fellas? Is he pushing a broom, or where did he wind up? I don't even know.
He's with the Jets, shockingly, Aaron Rodgers. That's why we thought
That's right.
So
That's right. And I think Peyton, since there's really no love for Russell in Denver, I think, in Seattle obviously got over him. I think Peyton can write him off at the end of the season, and no one will even care if it doesn't work out. So it's not a make or break, but if they do well, people will be shocked. If they do poorly, people won't be shocked. So I think it's all an upside. And I think he's a Drew Brees type of deal, undersized QB, got some offensive weapons. Could they make a run? Yeah, with Peyton calling the shots. Hey, guys had a couple years off, I think. So he's got a chance there. And I'm going to say they're going to finish in there, though, at 8-9. That's where I got them. So not quite as optimistic as Lugs, but a little bit more than T-Dog. All right, I guess that leaves two more teams left. Who do you like at number 2 in the AFC West? Lugs?
That would be the Chargers.
Shocker.
Yeah. Kellen Moore will finally give that offense the pep that it needs, especially if Staley will just stay out of the way, do the defense, let Kellen do what he knows how to do. So the way their schedule is shaken out, they're playing like at home, they play the Dolphins. That's a tough game. But then they've got the Raiders, Cowboys, Lions. They've got some time to heal up between the tough games. So I'm just Justin Herbert is a talent, and if Justin Herbert were on the Chiefs, they would win a Super Bowl just the way they will with Patrick Mahomes. But on this team in particular, the way it's constructed, I just don't hold out a whole lot of hope for them, even though they're going to win some games. I'm saying they'll go 10-7.
10-7, says the Lugs man. T-Dog, how do you like the, I'm assuming, Chargers?
Yes, last year I predicted them to win the division. That was a mistake.
Whoops.
Yeah. So, but they have the silver this year, and I have to kind of agree with Lugs. Obviously, the pure strength of this team is quarterback. Justin Herbert is a top 5 passer in this league. If you go back to last year, even with nagging rib injuries and depleted receiver core for most of the year, he cobbled together a good season and led them to a playoff berth for his first time. And again, kind of echoing what Lugg says, I think going from Lombardi to Kellen Moore will really open up this offense, because they were just, for him having such a strong arm, for them dinking and dunking as much as they did the last 2 years, it made no sense with the talent that Herbert has that he can really kind of unleash. And I think maybe not this year, but if they're able to maintain the key components, they're going to make an AFC championship appearance in the next 3 to 4 years, I think. Because I just think if he clicks with Kellen Moore's offense, I don't see how it doesn't work out. The one thing I do worry about is Staley, I think, is a good defensive coordinator, but the one thing that does kind of frustrate me, and I know it's kind of a trait, I guess you could say, of some of Vic Fangio's, is they leave the boxes light. But usually Fangio, if you look in terms of like building the roster, he usually gets like strong, stout players on the line that can hold up without extra presence along it. If you look at the Chargers, it's the sum is the parts are fine, but the sum doesn't really work out, because defensive end Morgan Fox is a presence off the edge. Austin Johnson played solid before his knee injury. And then D-tackle Sebastian Joseph Day was an effective tackler last year. But the Chargers were 28th against the run. They allowed 5.4 yards per run, which was the worst in the league. I mean, I know Lugs has been saying, the Bears are going to get trotted by all these AFC West teams. The Bears were the best running team last year, so that's the thing that the Chargers have to worry about. Teams they can usually maybe pencil in as like, oh, it's a W. It's like, well, if those teams can run, I mean, it's going to be a problem for this Chargers team because I just don't think personnel, they really fixed that problem. On top of it, there's a lot of pressure on this team because Staley's still on the hot seat from that playoff debacle against the Jags. Herbert's entering his last cheap season before he gets paid. And on top of it, currently, Chargers are $60 million over the cap next year. So they're going to have to purge a lot of people are going to have to be very creative with some of their books. And they have some talented but aging players in Khalil Mack, Kendricks, and Keenan Allen. And hopefully they can keep it together because Keenan Allen not being healthy last year, I think really did cost them a few wins. I have them going 10-7 and making the wild card.
10-7, making the wild card. All right, love it. I think we all agree on the Chargers. Here's my headline for this. Unleash the beast. This will be Justin Herbert's year. I think he'll do better than ever before. He'll be in conversation about being an MVP. He's got his new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, and I think it's going to be a whole lot better for him. I think they're a good team, but here's the thing. They've only had 2 double-digit winning seasons in the past, decade and a half. Can they do it again? I think so, but there's just the tradition there. It's unexpected. I don't think they can pull it off. I think they'll do great. And Lugs always hates the Bears, so he says the Bears will lose to everybody, so that's no surprise there. Just for the record, when he talks about they're going to play the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions, and the Vikings. But I got them going as Chargers. I got them one better than you boys. I got them at 11-6. Knocking on the door, but just coming up a little bit short. But hopefully they'll make the playoffs in some capacity. But, there's a lot of guys who are going to have 10 and 11 wins, I'm afraid, this year in the AFC. So we'll see how that goes. But agree, it's second place, 11-6. All right, let's go to the championship round. Who gets the gold medal in the West? Lugs, let me guess.
No real surprise here. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes. It didn't matter that Tyreek Hill was gone.
True.
The only loss this year that's major for them is Orlando Brown, but they brought in Jawan Taylor, which should shore that up somewhat. He won't be as good as Orlando was in his prime, certainly. Kansas City, they're going to have, no surprise here, just a tremendous tough schedule. They'll play the Eagles, Bengals, Bills, Dolphins, and then they've got the Jaguars and the Jets. So bottom line for me is obviously they're going to win going away, but I do think they will drop some games. I do think that they're not quite ready to be crowned Super Bowl champions just straight up right off the bat. I'm calling 13-4. 13-4 for Kansas City.
13-4. Lugs, how do you got them?
Well, Lugs just talked, but I'll talk first. Second, Lugs.
Second. Rewind the tape, T-Dog. Hello. Hello.
It's
Come
okay.
in. Come in.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Just kind of like we're all thinking it. Their strength is the number one strength in the whole league. It's Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. I mean, you rewind back a year. He lost his stud receiver, Tyreek Hill, and many thought the offense would regress. Mahomes ended up throwing for over 5,250 yards, a career best. Completed 67% of his passes, career best. Scored 45 touchdowns, passes, and running. Had a 14-3 record in the regular season. Won the MVP, and hoisted his second Lombardi at the age of 27. So you can make a case for other quarterbacks being as good. That's fine. I'm going to say he's the best. I think most people would agree with that. I know I'm not going out on a limb on that. It's funny, going back to the Tyreek conversation, the weakness of this team is wide receiver, though. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster, who at this point, I mean, he's always probably been a good receiver. He was never a number one, so it's maybe not like a big loss, but you currently look at their wide receivers. Valdez-Scantling is your veteran presence, but he's never really been more than a good third receiver on a team. You know, if you go back to those Packers team, he's usually was the deep threat third guy. Kadarius Toney has the potential to be really special. I know I always say he's so explosive, he's maybe too explosive because he always seems to get injured. He's only started 8 games in 2 seasons. And Sky Moore didn't do a whole lot in his first year, but he has the skills to become a really good starter. And SMU rookie receiver Rashee Rice, he's a tough contact catcher who just needs some time to develop. But like I said, they're kind of green. But again, with Patrick Mahomes, I think it's going to work out. And I know he's not technically a wide receiver, but Travis Kelce is their number one. He had over 150 targets last year. He, you know, consistently moved the chains for them. And kind of like Lugs brought up, I am worried about the O-line because they are starting 2 free agents at starting tackle. Donovan Smith, who was a longtime Bucs, he had a really severe down year. Now, I think some of it was due to injuries, but still, like, he'll be starting at left tackle. He'll be replacing Orlando Brown. And Juwan Taylor is actually getting paid more than Orlando Brown to play right tackle, who's playing left for the Bengals this year. And the last thing I'll just say is this defense is incredibly young, but I just want to give a shout out to Spagnuolo. He's really developed this young group of guys in the last few years, and they really started to gel. And I really think George Karlaftis, Purdue prospect, he's really going to take a next step and give them someone besides Chris Jones to really put pressure on defenses. I also have them going 13-4 and winning the division.
13-4. All right. Well, I think we're unanimous. It's all about Patrick. And you know what I'm excited about mostly? More State Farm commercials. You know, I don't know if they'll bring Rogers into it or just say, go away, old man. We got the star over here, and just Jake from State Farm, who's probably been working out again, and Patrick. But here's a little stat and factoid from our crack research team. Did you know Andy Reid has only missed the over on win totals once since 2013? So they're rated to be an over of 11.5 this year. So Andy's only missed that over on win totals once since 2013. I mean, the guy's just all that in a bag of chips. Combined with Patrick and all the things you mentioned, I don't know how they can't win that division. There's just too much magic in the bottle. And if Patrick stays healthy, you know, God willing, and everything lines up, I think they're your guys. So there you go. We've got it. It's unanimous. Raiders in 4th. Broncos in 3rd. Chargers taking the, what would that be, the silver, and the Chiefs taking the big kahuna gold there and making the playoffs. And, oh, gosh, do you think they're winning the division? I think so. Do you think they're going far? I think we'll talk about that later, but it sure sounds like it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're the class of that group of graduates, yeah.
Yep. All right, let's get on to something else. We'll do a little sports of yesteryear. Lugs, you ready with that?
Yes, sir.
And then we'll come back and talk about running backs and why they don't get paid any money anymore. It's not like it used to be. Well, something like that. Here we go, Lugs, stand by. Here comes the big open, man. There it is. There we go, stand by. Yes, sir. And now Lugs, he's out and about in his Ford Fairlane. Let's go with that tonight. And he's driving his car to give us sports of yesteryear. Go ahead, sir.
All right, 1909, Cleveland shortstop Neil Ball completes the first modern MLB unassisted triple play in the Indians' 6-1 win over the Boston Red Sox. 1922, T-Dog, you need to warm up your yodeling here for this, if you would. 1922, American swimmer Johnny Weissmuller, first to break 1-minute barrier for 100-meter freestyle. Swims 58.6 at Alameda, California, and he went on to be Tarzan. All right, go ahead, T-Dog. Love it. 1950, New York Yankees signed their first black players, Elston Howard and Frank Baines. 1991, Cal Ripken of the Baltimore Orioles plays in his 1500th consecutive game. Amazing. And finally, friend of the show's favorite driver, Roger Taylor is our friend of the show. In 2020, World Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton wins a record 8th Hungarian Grand Prix in Budapest to equal Michael Schumacher's record of wins at a single circuit. All right. Thank you, Roger Taylor, for pointing that out. That's it for this edition of Sports of Yesteryear.
Thank you, Lugs. Okay, quick question. Didn't they make a musical about that dude, Hamilton?
Oh.
Wrong,
Okay,
Hamilton.
I'm going to let that one go. Yeah. It was called I Ran Over Your Mama with My Big Old Car.
And shot you with Raymond Burr's gun.
Hey,
Aaron Burr's gun.
get the van, Mark.
Raymond Burr, Aaron Burr, Hamilton, Alexander. What's the other guy's name? I don't follow Formula One. Lester Hamilton, what's his name?
I just like that there is, I believe he was an IndyCar. I'm sure he probably drives another. I like that there's a driver named Will Power. Like,
Yeah,
how
man.
perfect a name is that for a driver?
Yeah, right. Moss Power. Okay, yeah, T-Dog, running backs aren't what they used to be, apparently. We're having issues with guys getting paid, taking the franchise tag. Two come to mind. What do you think? What's happening with this?
I understand it's an issue of the business. I was just trying to think of, I guess, to set the context. Saquon Barkley couldn't get a long-term deal. I mean, he was a focal point in the offense last year. He had over 1,650 yards from the line of scrimmage, 10 touchdowns. He was the main reason, I think, that the Giants made the playoffs.
And wasn't he picked like 5th overall, top 5 overall? What was his?
He's actually number 2.
Yeah, number 2. Yep.
He was number 2.
Crazy.
Daniel Jones actually got the long-term contract where, again, Daniel Jones played fine. I made too many pop shots at Daniel Jones, so I don't want to take pop shots, but it's just crazy to me. He's getting $40 million a year where I think the offense was really carried by Saquon and Dexter Lawrence and kind of that makeshift defense. They were the parts that really carried that Giants team to have like kind of a Cinderella run last year. You look at Josh Jacobs, who led the league in rushing with 1,653 yards rushing, 12 TDs, and 400 yards receiving. He can't get a long-term contract. And then even Tony Pollard, who is the only explosive offensive player on the Dallas Cowboys, and that's why when he got injured against the 49ers, that game was over. And, and again, this is not me hating on CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is a good receiver, but if you go back to that game, you had a linebacker running down the field with them stride for stride. So that's what I'm trying to say is CeeDee Lamb is a good receiver, but the only explosive guy they had who I think could create separation was Tony Pollard last year. And when he went down, he can't get a long-term contract. I just think I'll ask you all if you think any of these suggestions, and if you have any suggestions to maybe help the running back issue. I know maybe we can't get them more money, but maybe we can get them to bigger money quicker. So first off, that I've heard and I really like, can't franchise. One position you can't franchise. You cannot franchise the running back position. Or you bundle all skill position players under the franchise. So that means wide receiver, running back, and tight end. So the franchise tag works that the player gets paid an average of the top 5 players at that position. So all of a sudden, which currently the running backs get, I think, $10 million essentially a year, it would be boosted to like 15 to, maybe even $20 million. And also that would help tight ends because Jimmy Graham a few years ago, he got really screwed on the deal where he was essentially a wide receiver and he got kind of, shaved off money.
You got lineman
money. So that's
money.
one.
Right.
Rookie contracts for running backs, again, just for running backs, only 2 years. so that they can show their talent, and then they could get better money offers, because then people can't be like 4 or 5 years down the road, it's like, well, you have a lot of tread on your tires, right? The other one is just after their career, set up a fast track system for them to become, get into coaching, front office, media, or training instructors. And this one's a little more far-fetched, because I know pretty much, I think in the United States, it's still illegal. Allow stem cell treatment in the United States just for running backs.
Wow.
I'll go with that one.
Okay.
But it's just the nature of the game. It's changed so much, isn't it? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, I heard
Do you think?
Austin Eckler on a podcast saying that essentially he was the offense.
He was.
And all of it. He was the offense. And the number 3 receiver is making more money than Austin Eckler.
wow.
I mean, look at this realistically. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, those were last year's Pro Bowl running backs. And they can't get a deal. So that lets you know that the passing game is all that matters. It really is in the minds of GMs and everybody at this point, because of the way the rules have been changed. And, you can't clothesline people, and you can't just tear their heads off going across the middle. So, yeah, I don't see it changing anytime soon. I mean, the NFL, the viewership is just through the roof. No matter, it's the only thing that people watch on broadcast television, basically.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the tears their heads off rule, that goes into effect this year, so that's for sure. And we all have to agree that Daniel Jones is really Woody from Toy Story. I mean, come on. But, yeah, and I'll throw another name in there. Dalvin Cook, it just gets cut by the Vikings after being their leading rusher for, 4 seasons?
Yes.
And it just, and Derrick Henry's over here going, what is happening to my people? He's put out tweets and, pretty upset about the whole thing. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's just the nature of the game. I agree with Lugs. It's just going a different direction. And Roger Goodell, everybody agrees. Let's go pass, because that's what people want to see, circus catches and guys that can run fast down the sideline and catch stuff over the shoulder. I mean, back shoulder, whatever. That's what they want.
Like I said, I think there should be modifications, because I don't think they're ever going to get the money that they got. But maybe if they can get to, a second contract quicker, if they don't have to have the 4-year contract, or if they're drafted in the first round. Because if you really look at it, not that anyone would ever do this with a running back, essentially if you're taken in the first round as a running back, you can be held under contract with not an ability to be a free agent for 8 years. Because you have 4 year, and then you have the 5th year option, and then you can franchise someone 3 years. So
what contract spoiled it? Zeke Elliott's a few years ago, or was it Christian McCaffrey's, or who kind of,
there
set
have
the
been a few,
tent too high?
Yeah. Ezekiel Elliott, he's had moments, but I just don't think he lived up to it, because I don't think I think certain seasons he didn't get into the shape he should have.
So we soured the whole deal for all of them? Is that your feeling?
Well, it's just him. Todd Gurley. And
Oh, yeah,
Todd
Gurley.
I'm
That's
not
right.
going to kill Todd Gurley for this. Todd Gurley, he was one of the main reasons that Sean McVay instantaneously his offense clicked and turned around.
Yep.
It was more than that, but just he was such a dynamic running back and receiver out of the backfield. But he had a degenerative knee issue, I believe, even coming out. And it just kind of flared up in that second season under Sean McVay, and then it became aggressively bad in that third season. And, you can make comments on Alvin Kamara's maybe not living up to it because the tread come off the tire a little bit. But still, even kind of going back to what Lug said, you look at all the running backs aren't created equal, like Barkley and, Pollard and even Jacobs to a lesser extent. But Austin Eckler, I mean, he is more than a running back. He's a very dynamic receiver, and even like Bijan Robinson was noted for being a great slot receiver for University of Texas. Like, he is more than a running back. So he offers you versatility. And I just feel like that's the shame of it is like, yeah, if you're just like a first and second down, like plugger, yeah, maybe you shouldn't get paid anyways. But again, like a guy like Austin Eckler, who unlike Barkley and Josh Jacobs, who are first round picks, this guy was a unrestricted or was an undrafted free agent. So he's never gotten big money, really, for how
And
much.
unfortunately, probably never will. You know,
Definitely.
it's just sad. Yeah, what I'm saying is, if you're a running back, hey, change your position.
Whoa.
Become that slot receiver, you know? I mean, that's where the cash is, other than the quarterback, that's where the cash is. Or bulk up mightily and become left tackle. They don't need you at running back anymore. I mean, as long as the offensive line holds up, you don't have to really block. So, hey, become a receiver. Take less wear and tear. Running backs, even when they're not carrying the ball, they're getting whacked on the legs all the time. That's just the nature of the way the game plays.
How do you make yourself 4 inches taller, though, to be a lineman? That's what I want to know.
You do that Barney Fife thing where you get in the closet and stretch your chin out, you know.
Citizens arrest. So, Lugs, I guess what this is saying is, man, you got a shot, you got some eligibility, be a little scat back, you know, be out there with the guys, you know.
Yeah, well, the Potsdam Boilermakers or whatever called me, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't take Philadelphia and that area of the world. You know, I don't like that Scrabble.
Scrabble. Scatback Crothers, wasn't he? That's the old songster. Scatback Crothers.
Scatman.
Oh, Scat.
Scatman.
Scatman Crothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he got that voice up in here.
All right, man, we've burned some energy on that deal. What else tonight? Anything else? 44 past the hour, 71 degrees. Beautiful night.
I was DeAndre Hopkins
Yes.
to the Titans.
Yes, please.
He reportedly signed a 2-year deal worth $12 million in its base and then $15 million in incentives. I'll be honest with you guys. I know some people have been poo-pooed it. I think, because I believe I had the Titans 9-8 and I had the Jaguars 10-7. I think he's a big enough difference. He could flip the division. I know that's maybe aggressive.
And
but,
is he taking passes from Will Levis?
well, that's where I worry if it does become Will Levis this year. But I again, kind of like Odell, we've kind of talked about. I don't think he's an elite number one anymore, but I think he's savvy and tough. He's always been a great contact and body control receiver. And I think if he stays healthy, he should get 1,100 yards receiving and like 7 touchdowns. And I know the other team that it came down to was the Pats, and some people were like, well, he should have gone to the Pats. It's like the Patriots was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
If Tannehill's healthy, he's better than Mac Jones, just flat out. He just
Well,
flat out
plus
is.
Tennessee has a chance to have a winning season.
And-
The Patriots, they're going to get killed.
And Lugs hit the main thing. The AFC East is just brutal. Where if you look at the AFC South, I
You
think
got
we're
a shot.
all bullish.
Yep.
We're all bullish on the Jags, and we should be because it looks like the light really went on in the second half. And they're probably going to be better than what their record was last year. But that being said, last year Titans had a shot to make the playoffs and barely lost to the Jaguars. I believe week 17, where they picked Josh Dobbs off the street to start at quarterback, and they almost won the game. So if Tannehill's able to stay healthy, and, you know, if Treylon Burks, their wide receiver they took last year out of Arizona or Arkansas, if he really turns it on this year, and again, when he got healthy last year, if you go back and look, he really was a difference maker for the short period he was able to before he got concussed. So you add him and DeAndre Hopkins, and obviously I think this is the last ride of Derrick Henry. I think he's going to go full force. You know, and lastly, the Patriots are going to pay him as much, you know? And when you're 31 years old like DeAndre Hopkins, you take the best deal. I mean, like kind of like we're talking about with running backs, it gets to a certain point, you just got to take the best deal. So.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win. It's a good move for both of them. Hopkins gets to essentially what will be the end of his career, I would imagine, with this contract, and he gets some money. He'll get a little better quarterbacking than he's had, and he will make a difference for the Titans. I mean, they can run it down your throat, not like they once did, but just enough to where he can get free.
That's the look. There's still some big what ifs. Obviously, we always worry about offensive lines. You still look at their offensive line on paper, and it's a lot of what ifs. So that's the part that concerns you. Can Tannehill stay healthy? Will Levis really push him? I mean, let's not even forget maybe Malik Willis is still in there somewhere. Do they make a transition onto that? But the reason why I had him going 9-8, even without DeAndre Hopkins, is you go back last year, and we were praising Kansas City. They almost beat Kansas City with Malik Willis, who you could tell, at least at that time, I'm not saying Vrabel's opinion has changed on Malik Willis. He did not want to play him. He tried to cover him up as much as possible. And the Kansas City didn't win that game till very late. So, they have a great defense. They are well run on that side of the ball, and if Derrick Henry can play at a high level, they'll stay in every game. And I think it was the right move because, you can blow up, you could do what Texas and Bears did last year, just kind of stink. But it is kind of refreshing for certain teams like Mike Vrabel. We're never going to try to tank it. We're always going to try to be competitive and go for it as much as we can. So it is kind of fun to watch.
It's a win-win for everybody, and I think you're right. Shakes up that division, makes it even more interesting. Watch out. Here they come. The Titans are getting ready. Anything else, fellas?
That would be it.
All right,
that's it.
Let's wrap this up. You've wasted a good 20 minutes with sports and other stuff. Brought to you by Henry Lawrence Clothier, where the models buy their clothes. Many locations throughout the metro, including Randhurst Shopping Center. Stop in and ask for our guy. He's there tonight.
Fish. And because this week businessman Howard Schultz was born, say you don't know Howard, well, you know his company. That's Starbucks. To celebrate the short, tall, grande, and venti of the international coffee business, Fish has worked a deal to acquire a mobile Starbucks this Saturday at 1 p.m. Get yourself a quad and a scone and enjoy a caffeinated extravaganza. Admission is $10. Proceeds will go to the Terminally Jittery Foundation. Come on down.
All right. A quad and a scone, just what we need. This is sports and other stuff. We wish you good hunting, fishing, caffeinating, and camping. See you next time. So long.